From psychological manipulation to disappearances that would leave Interpol shaking, these are the crimes that the characters of the incredible digital circus would pay for. Updated up to episode 6. And get ready, because this circus is not only incredible, it's also the most illegal of all. Starting with everyone's favorite rabbit, Jax. From the very first episode, Jax lives to torment every member of the circus. From the beginning, we already see him driving poor Gangle to the brink of madness with his harassment, his constant bullying, and, as if that weren't enough, he ends up mutilating Zooble. For what reason? To use the arm as a little shovel and scratch his butt like it's nothing. So let's do the math. For his aggravated psychological harassment, he gets at least 15 years behind bars. For inciting Gangle to suicide, that already earns him a life sentence. The mutilation of Zooble would be another 25 years without the right to bail. And let's add the daily emotional cruelty, because this rabbit just doesn't know when to stop. That's another 50 years added up. So far, Jax's sentence exceeds 90 years in maximum security prison. Although, let's be honest, with his pessimistic attitude, he'd probably end up in solitary confinement from day one, and we're just getting started. Jax might be one of the most criminal of them all, and I'm not exaggerating. Throughout the series, he not only destroys everyone's peace of mind, he also gets involved in much more serious things. Let's not forget that assault charge, after throwing Kinger and poor Gangle into the hole where Zooble was. And, as if that wasn't enough, hitting them again and again as if it were his favorite pastime. For this attempted homicide and repeated assaults, Jax would end up facing 20 years in prison and another 4 years for assault, along with a $4,000 fine. And of course, his corresponding restraining order. But Jax's list doesn't stop at just bullying and assaults. The rabbit takes his crimes to much darker levels. And we're talking about terrorism, because when he manipulates the creature from the chocolate lake, he basically commits an act of mass destruction. Add to that the manipulation and coercion, using others as pawns in his twisted games. And that's a sure death sentence, and another 10 years in prison for his assaults and coercion. And, as if that weren't enough, don't forget the attempted murder of the poor digital crocodile characters. I mean, it's not just bothering his friends anymore, we're talking about trying to erase lives here. Even if they're virtual or just for fun, this deserves another 10 years in prison. And the list goes on and on. That leads us to episode 6, where he exploited Kane's game and, with Pomni, committed 5 murders. And if we give him 10 years in prison for each one, he's earned his 50 marks in jail. In total, Jax committed the crimes of psychological harassment, incitement to suicide, mutilation, emotional cruelty, assault, terrorism, coercion, attempted murder 6 times. That would be a total of 219 years in prison, 1 life sentence, a restraining order, $4,000, and a death penalty. Let's continue with Kane, the most bizarre mouth with eyes in the circus. And this big-toothed guy has all the traits of a psychopath who plays with his participants as if they were mere puppets. But, watch out, he does it with such charm that it hardly seems like a crime. First, he kidnapped Pomni, luring her into the digital circus and leaving her trapped with no way out, constantly watched by hundreds of all-seeing eyes. That alone is enough for someone to throw him behind bars for 6 years. And if that wasn't enough, add constant psychological harassment, because keeping Pomni under surveillance 24/7 and using that fear to control her is emotional torture. That translates to another 25 years of sentence and a few mandatory therapy sessions, because honestly, someone needs to teach this diente some boundaries. But there's more. Repeated physical assault against Bubble. He beats him up several times, and even though Bubble seems to have a toxic relationship with Kane, that doesn't change the fact that he hits him and puts him in danger. Since he's an abusive big-toothed guy, we sentence him to 8 years in prison and issue a restraining order against Bubble. And if that wasn't enough, Kane doesn't just manipulate Pomni and Bubble. He controls all the members. He controls the narrative of the digital circus as if it were an evil reality show and imprisons anyone who dares to abstract themselves. On top of that, we add another 5 years in prison for abuse of power, Also, let's not forget to count each one of those trapped in the circus. This counts as a hostage because they're being held against their will, and this is called kidnapping and false imprisonment, adding 5 years for each person, and in total that would be 28 years in prison, and they should shut down his business. In summary, Kane committed the crimes of kidnapping, psychological harassment, physical assault, abuse of power, false imprisonment, paying with a total of 72 years in prison, a restraining order against Bubble, paying for Pomni's therapy, and shutting down his business. Now let's go with Gangle. At first glance, she may seem more harmless and even the weakest in the circus, but don't be fooled. Behind that fragile appearance is a crazy old lady. Gangle might have learned a few things from Jax. We start with kidnapping and her payback on Jax. Because when she has authority, she doesn't hesitate to torture and imprison the abusive rabbit, just to show him who's boss, which leaves her with 10 years in prison. And yes, she almost goes over the edge carrying explosives and ready to blow everything to pieces. So terrorism and attempted murder are added to her list, earning her a death sentence just for terrorism and 8 years in prison for attempted murder. Even so, compared to Kane and Jax, Gangle ranks below Jax and Kane. Who would have thought Gangle would go to such extremes? In total, Gangle committed the crimes of kidnapping, terrorism, and attempted murder, receiving a total sentence of 18 years in prison and a death sentence. It's the circus nutcase's turn, Ginger. This guy is unstable, almost absent-minded, and his unpredictable behavior makes him a constant danger inside the digital circus. No one is safe from his outbursts. He hits, throws, manipulates, and yes, he even goes so far as to mutilate poor Zooble, leaving her with detachable face pieces like a toy. Although no one denies that Zooble is a toy everyone gets distracted with and uses her parts. But for this crime, Ginger gets his 4 years in jail. But that's not all. Ginger doesn't just act out of anger. He also knows how to use his powers to his advantage. During the pistol duel challenge, he nearly kills his teammate several times and even regenerates Ragatha's life, using his abilities secretly to gain an advantage. His madness makes him an involuntary manipulator. Without meaning to, he drags everyone into dangerous and chaotic situations in the digital circus. Because his recklessness could cause accidents and deaths, we sentence him to 15 years in prison. If this Ginger existed in the real world, he would be racking up 20 years in prison for multiple assaults, mutilation, attempted murder, and a death sentence for psychological terrorism. Now we continue with everyone's favorite toy, the colorful Zooble. At first glance, she may seem harmless and adorable, but don't be fooled by this Lego. During the gun challenge, she takes out Pomni and Jax, tired of hearing them sing non-stop, and on top of that, she upgrades herself to get rid of them. She makes it clear from the start she's not here to play games. In terms of real justice, Zooble would be serving 2 life sentences, and she shouldn't even think about getting out, because her crimes are far too serious to consider any kind of freedom.
Ah, Ragatha, the sweet rag doll, no one would ever doubt her, or would they?
Ragatha sits quietly having tea with a ghost, while Jax is trapped under her control. We don't know if she's a potential psychopath or if everyone is just rebelling against the crazy rabbit. She's already serving a 10-year prison sentence for kidnapping. Behind her cute appearance and button eyes, Ragatha shows that you shouldn't trust ragdolls, because even with her innocent look, she can control, manipulate, and punish the others in the digital circus. Ragatha only takes home the crime of a single kidnapping, so she would have to pay with 10 years in prison. Pomni also has a dark history, and we are forbidden to forget when Pomni turned into evil Pomni. First, Ragatha's murder in the last episode's Battle Royale already gives her 5 years in prison, but Pomni didn't stop there. There, she added 3 more murders, which means another 20 years in prison. Pomni let herself be carried away by anger, pointing her weapon directly at Jax and almost sending him to St. Peter, which we count as attempted murder. This crime is punished with 3 years in prison. And so Pomni adds to the list 4 murders and 1 attempted murder, for which she will have to serve 27 years in prison. At least it's easier for her than for Jax. But in summary, friends, if we really applied human law inside the digital circus, the only crimes that would actually count would be Kane's. Illegal deprivation of freedom and creating a totally dangerous environment. And these were the most criminal acts committed by the characters of the digital circus. Leave in the comments, which one of them would you spare?